I only came home to grab a charger. That's it. A 5-minute stop. But when I opened the gate, I was met with a deafening congratulations. Confetti, laughter, flashbulbs. Over 100 people in my backyard, drinks raised, music blaring. A huge glittery banner stretched across the patio. He asked. She said yes. I froze. Everyone smiled like I was interrupting. That's when I saw my sister, Alicia, wearing a long white dress and holding up her left hand, ring first, like a trophy. Beside her was her boyfriend turned fiancé, Derek, already popping another bottle of champagne. My mother walked up to me, wine glass in hand, grinning ear to ear like she was starring in a movie she'd written herself. It's your sister, baby. Isn't it wonderful? She's engaged. I stared at her. My keys were still in my hand. My charger, still in the glove box. Then she said it, casually like she was discussing weather. Oh, and we took a $17,000 loan in your name for the engagement party. Surprise. Consider it a gift to your sister. My name is Naomi, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because this story, this betrayal, it didn't just change my life. It showed me how fake love wears the prettiest smiles. Have you ever realized you were just a wallet with legs to the people you thought were your family? I didn't scream. I didn't throw my glass. I didn't ask how they had the audacity to use my credit, forge my information, and still expect a thank you. I just stood there, blinking. The music was too loud. People were taking selfies behind me like I was invisible. But my silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. I turned, walked back to my car, sat inside, and pulled up the banking app. There it was, a loan I never approved, taken out with my name and social security number. Co-signed? No. Forged? Definitely. The lender? A local credit union. And the contact email? My mother's. Still not breathing hard. I froze the account. Reported identity theft. Locked my credit. Then I opened a separate folder on my phone, the one labeled "Do not open unless they go too far." Inside was a single, time-stamped video. Clear footage of a conversation between my mother and Alicia, caught last Christmas on my nanny cam, the one they didn't know was still recording after the baby shower. In the video, Alicia says, "I mean, Naomi's not going to get married anyway. Might as well let the money go to someone who knows what to do with it. And Mom, she owes us. After all we've done. She should feel proud we're using her name for something beautiful." I stared at the screen, then hit share. To 102 recipients. Every guest on the RSVP list. Even Derek's ultra-conservative mother, who always prayed for our family to find its morals again. The caption? She said yes. Just not with her own money. 12 minutes later, I watched from my parked car across the street as chaos rippled through the backyard. One by one, faces turned toward my mother. Then Alicia. Then the fiancé. Phones came out. Eyes widened. A woman screamed. Derek threw his champagne flute and stormed out the side gate. And me? I finally grabbed my charger. Then I smiled, because the party was over, and my silence had just stolen the spotlight. Growing up, my name was never Naomi, not to them. I was the responsible one. The helper. The one who made sense. Alicia was the dazzling one. The beautiful problem child with charm as sharp as her lies. She'd skip class, sneak boys in through the laundry room, rack up debts like trophies, and somehow I was always the one Mom looked at when it all fell apart. Naomi, fix this. You know your sister isn't built for stress. I used to believe it. Thought maybe it was my duty to keep things afloat. That being the quiet, sensible daughter meant being the sacrifice. When Dad left, they both unraveled like a badly stitched dress. Alicia took to partying. Mom took to blame. And I took to working. Straight as. Scholarships. Night shifts through college. I studied marketing while delivering groceries just to keep my student loans in check. Meanwhile, Alicia followed her passion into a lifestyle of manicures and modeling that never paid a cent. And every time her rent was late, guess who got the midnight call? I didn't realize then that my success wasn't admired, it was exploited. Even when I bought my first car at 23, Mom said, "Be a dear and lend it to your sister." She has a date. Lend it? Alicia kept it for 4 weeks and returned it with a dent and a perfume I couldn't scrub out. I didn't argue. I never did, because deep down I thought, maybe if I was good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, they'd finally love me the way I deserved. But love built on convenience? It's not love. It's leverage. I should have seen it coming that day in the backyard. The polished banner, the manicured lawn, the cater table bursting with food I never got as a child. All of it screamed money, but not theirs. Mine. $17,000 worth of a lie. When I got home that night, I sat with a silence. And it hit me. They hadn't just stolen my credit. They'd stolen my story, rewritten it so Alicia could be the golden daughter, and I could be the invisible source. But they forgot one thing. I wasn't the same girl from years ago. I had receipts. Literally. Months ago, I'd started keeping track of everything. Screenshots of text requests, Venmo receipts labeled Alicia's dentist, emails with mom asking for just a quick emergency loan. All of it. At first, it was for my own peace. But now, it felt like ammunition. And the more I scrolled, the angrier I became. One screenshot in particular stopped me cold. It was from Mom. Naomi will never say no. She thinks being needed is the same as being loved. That night, something inside me died. But something else, something colder, was born. The girl who took guilt like oxygen? She was gone. And the woman who was left behind? She was going to make sure they never borrowed her name again. Not for a car. Not for a credit card. Not for a fantasy wedding that didn't even belong to them. And definitely not for a happy ending they never earned. In the weeks after I sent that file to all 102 guests, I expected rage. What I didn't expect was silence. No calls from Mom. No long texts from Alicia, filled with tearful, "You ruined everything" dramatics. No emails. No threats. Not even a knock on my door. And that silence? It screamed louder than any insult. But it didn't take long to uncover the truth. 3 days after the backyard blow-up, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me to pick up. It was Derek's mom. The same woman who once told me I was too quiet for a family like yours. Now her voice shook with a mix of shame and sympathy. "I just want to say, I'm sorry. I didn't realize what they'd done to you. I didn't say anything. Just let her talk." Derek's called off the engagement. He saw the messages. The loan. The way your mother laughed when someone asked why you weren't at the party. He said. She paused. He said Alicia looked proud when she admitted it. Proud. They were proud of stealing from me. That's when it hit me. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was spiritual. They had practiced erasing me. Not just once. Not just now. But for years. And I'd let them. Derek's mom told me something else. Something darker. Your mom said she hoped the marriage would finally show Naomi who the real woman in the family is. That Alicia deserved the spotlight because she knew how to use it. That night, I went through old family photos. And I noticed something I hadn't before. In every major celebration, every dinner, every so-called family moment, I was either cropped at the edge or holding something, a tray, a purse, someone's coat. Always the helper. Never the one celebrated. They didn't forget me at that engagement party. They planned it that way. I scrolled back through texts, through emails, and one stuck out. A message from my mother to the party planner. The guest list is done. Naomi won't be staying. She's just coming by to get something. My chest tightened. They'd known. The whole thing had been timed. Mom waited for me to come by to grab my charger, so they could drop the news to my face and call it a gift. A gift. They wanted to see my pain. To see me swallow it like I always had. But this time, I had something better than silence. I had a plan. I'd already frozen the loan, reported the fraud, but I also reached out to an attorney. I handed over every document, every forged signature, every screenshot. It was more than enough to launch an investigation. But I didn't stop there. I contacted the party vendors, the caterer, the planner, the florist. Each of them had contracts signed digitally, with my forged name, on my behalf. And under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, that was identity theft. The next move wasn't revenge. It was accountability. Because they hadn't just used me. They depended on the belief that I would stay silent. They forgot I'd grown teeth. They forgot my silence had always been grace, not permission. It started with an email. To be specific, it started with a formal letter of fraud notification sent to the credit union that had approved the $17,000 loan. Attached were notarized affidavits, the police report I filed, and a statement from my attorney. But I didn't stop at legal. No, this wasn't just about debt. This was about exposure. Because people like my mother and sister, they don't learn through confrontation. They learn through consequence. So, step by step, I built a strategy, not of rage, but of quiet precision. First, I spoke to a former college roommate who worked in social media marketing. I told her I wanted to correct the public story my family had built. The fairy tale of the beloved, close-knit household they used to gain sympathy, favors, and money. She helped me put together a private blog post, loaded with evidence, screenshots of my forged signatures, text conversations where they admitted borrowing my info, and even clips from the nanny cam footage I hadn't yet shared publicly. The blog wasn't labeled as revenge. It was labeled, "When Family Isn't Family, a Financial Abuse Survivor Story." I sent it only to select people, vendors, family friends, a few journalists and local media who loved stories about unseen betrayals behind perfect fences. The response? Unbelievable. Within 48 hours, I had 4 podcast invites, 2 column requests, and a flood of support from people who had been used by their own relatives. But while the blog spread, I worked on something even more important. Operation Shutdown. One by one, I began reversing everything that had once tied me to my mother and sister. Phone plan? I'd been paying the family plan for 4 years. I canceled it. Streaming accounts, utilities, Amazon Prime tied to my card? Gone. The used Honda Civic that Alicia had borrowed 2 years ago? Still registered under my name. I reported it stolen. The joint savings account Mom had begged me to keep just in case. Emptied. Closed. But the most brutal move was also the simplest. I changed my number. That was the first time I cried, not out of grief, but from the clean break. The freedom of not waiting for a notification that would ruin my day. Meanwhile, their world started to crack. Alicia's wedding plans fell apart. Derek had disappeared. Vendors demanded full payment. And when they realized the contract signatures were forged, some threatened lawsuits. And the best part? That $17,000 loan? The credit union launched a formal fraud investigation. Both my mother and sister were notified. Their names were flagged. Their accounts frozen. They were informed that repayment or potential criminal charges could follow. Still, I said nothing. Because the louder they screamed into silence, the more the world started asking the same question I once did. How could someone do this to their own daughter? And the answer? Because they never saw me as a daughter. I was a tool, a credit score, a lifeline. But I had cut the cord. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one drowning. They were. And I was standing on the shore, dry and unbothered. The first public crack came during brunch. Not mine, of course. I had long stopped attending family events. But this one made the news. A well-known cousin of ours, an influencer with just enough clout to go viral, had hosted a live birthday brunch in a local garden cafe. My mother and Alicia were invited. What none of them expected was that someone at the table had read my blog and printed it. Halfway through mimosas and photo ops, the woman calmly pulled out a packet of papers, set it on the table, and asked, "Is this true?" Alicia tried to laugh it off until the screenshots were passed around. That same day, I received a DM from someone I barely knew from high school. "Girl, your mom and sister just got dragged at Naomi's brunch. Everyone's talking about it. You okay?" I didn't reply, because I was better than okay. I was watching them lose the thing they cared about most. Not me, not family. Status. You see, the tables didn't turn with lawsuits. They turned with reputation collapse. Vendors they'd once charmed blacklisted them. Mom's beloved charity circle? Gone. She was quietly removed from the planning committee for their annual gala. One board member wrote me privately, "We can't associate with anyone involved in active fraud investigations. I hope you're rebuilding. You deserve better." Even their neighbors, the ones who used to wave politely when I carried in groceries, stopped by my new place with baskets and apologies. "We didn't know," they'd say. "They always talked like you were the cold one. We had no idea." That was the thing about abusers. They spin the story until you believe you're the villain just for surviving.
But now?
Now the story had a narrator.
Me.
And I didn't even need to speak anymore. Then came the final blow. A letter, certified, sealed, from the credit union. After investigating the forged documents and matching email trail, the bank determined intentional identity fraud. Charges were not pressed because of my signed waiver, but repayment was demanded in full. $17,000. Due within 60 days. And the account? Frozen. Neither my mother nor Alicia could open another line of credit at that institution again. They called. Of course they did. First it was Mom. "You've always been so emotional, Naomi. Do you really want to destroy your own family over a misunderstanding?" Then Alicia.
Wow.
"So you're going to ruin my whole future over one mistake? Over a little money?" I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the voicemails to my attorney for record keeping. And as a little cherry on top, I posted a simple tweet. They used my name to fund a party I wasn't invited to. So I used the truth to reclaim it. No names. No need. Anyone who knew. And the rest? They asked me to speak on their podcasts, to write for their platforms. One even offered me a book deal about financial abuse within families. And me? I said yes. Because the thing about tables turning? Once you stop apologizing for standing, people finally see who's been sitting on your back the whole time. The first eviction notice came a month later. Not for me, of course.
For them.
The house, the one they'd turned into their castle of lies, was never really theirs. It was Dad's. He'd left it to be shared equally between us after the divorce, but they'd never told me that. They assumed I'd never ask. Assumed I'd never check the will. They were wrong. After the fraud case closed, my attorney filed a motion for property division. Quietly. Legally. By the time they were served, it was too late to cry foul. Mom called. "Naomi, you wouldn't dare." But I would. And I did. I'd given them 30 years of my life, and they'd handed me back dust. The judge sided with me. Given the evidence of financial abuse, identity theft, and will concealment, I was granted full ownership of the house. They had 30 days to leave. Alicia went live on social media that night, sobbing in candlelight. My sister kicked us out. "We're homeless now." The comments? Brutal. Because by then, the truth had outpaced her lies. People dragged her for months, reposting screenshots, mocking the fake crying, reminding her what she and Mom had done. One comment under her viral breakdown said, "You threw a party with stolen money. Now you're crying that the cake melted? Please." Mom disappeared from public life entirely. The charity circuit cut her off. The friends she bragged to?
Gone.
Even her church group, the one she'd once ruled like a queen, voted to remove her from leadership. She texted me once. "I miss when we were a family." I stared at the words, then deleted the message without responding. Because what they called family was just control dressed up in tradition. I didn't miss it. I didn't miss being the unpaid therapist, the emergency ATM, the coat rack at every party. I didn't miss watching my accomplishments repackaged as their generosity. They thought I'd be too kind to fight back. But kindness doesn't mean weakness. And survival doesn't need their permission. The week they moved out, I went to the house, now legally mine, and stood in the silence they left behind. There were stains in the carpet, holes in the walls, dents in the cabinets. And still, I smiled. Because I knew no matter how ruined the shell was, the foundation was mine now. I called a contractor, hired a crew, not to rebuild the past, but to build something I had never been allowed to have. A space where I wasn't erased. And as for Alicia, she bounced between friends' couches and sad little Instagram lives where she begged for donations to reclaim her life. But people weren't buying her fairy tale anymore. She'd spent too long pretending her crown was earned. Now, without stolen gold, it slipped. And me? I got the house. I got the peace. And I got the last word, without ever raising my voice. Because revenge didn't come in screams or slaps. It came in proof, power, and peace. And they lost all three. The house was quiet for the first time in years. Not silent with tension or echoing with blame, just quiet. A kind of peace I didn't know a building could hold. I painted the walls, white and warm gold, tore down the awful kitchen wallpaper Mom swore was charming, removed the heavy curtains, let sunlight flood the living room. I changed the locks, not just physically, but spiritually.
This was my space now.
Every floorboard, every squeaky stair, every scar in the drywall had meaning. I kept one, just one, mark by the back door, a scuff where I once dropped my books in high school after running late from a double shift. That scratch reminded me of the girl who kept going when nobody clapped. The girl who held up a collapsing house and was called selfish when she finally stepped outside. I started working from home full-time. By then, my blog had turned into something much bigger, a platform. I called it in her name. It was for women who were financially exploited by their own families, women who were taught that being loved meant being used. We ran articles, webinars, and resource lists. Within 3 months, I was invited to speak on a national panel about intergenerational financial abuse. A quiet movement was building, and my inbox overflowed. One woman wrote, "I thought I was crazy, but after reading your story, I realized I was just surviving." Another shared, "You helped me file my first fraud report. You saved my credit. You saved me." That did something to me. The same way my family once drained me, these women restored me. For the first time, I wasn't the helper out of obligation.
I was the leader by choice.
I invested in myself, hired a financial coach, built an LLC, launched workshops, booked a literary agent. And then one morning, something strange happened. I got a call, a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. It was Derek, Alicia's ex-fiancé. "Naomi," he said, his voice heavier than I remembered. I read everything. I didn't know the truth back then, and I'm sorry. I paused. "You believed the loudest voice in the room."
"I don't blame you," I said. Still,
I should have asked you what happened, not just smiled and toasted. I didn't need his guilt, but I appreciated the growth. Before he hung up, he said, "I hope you know, your story changed how I see everything." I did know, because I had changed too. I wasn't angry anymore. Not constantly. Grief still visited sometimes, especially on quiet nights, or when I passed people hugging their moms at brunch. But grief didn't own me. I did. I bought myself a new car. Nothing flashy, but mine. And this time, no one else had the keys. I threw myself a birthday dinner, my first one in years. 10 women came. All survivors, all warriors. We laughed, toasted, cried. One of them raised a glass and said, "To Naomi, for showing us that leaving isn't the end. It's the beginning." I didn't walk away from my family. They walked over me. And I just stopped lying still. It was a Sunday morning when I saw her again. My mother. Outside the community center where I was speaking at a local event, Healing After Financial Abuse. I hadn't seen her in person since the house transfer. She looked smaller. The kind of small that isn't about weight, but about dignity lost. She stood by the sidewalk holding a box of photos, old ones. Me as a baby, as a teen, the diploma picture she never framed. I walked past her. She called out,
"Naomi, please."
"Just listen." I stopped. Not out of softness, but out of curiosity. I turned and said nothing. "I know I can't undo what we did. I know we hurt you. I miss my daughter." I stared at her. Then I said, calm and clear, "You didn't miss your daughter. You missed your access." She blinked. I continued, "You missed the credit cards.
The free rides.
The blank checks. You missed the silence that let you sleep at night while I stayed up budgeting groceries you said were a privilege." Her eyes watered. But I didn't stop. "I rebuilt myself from the ground you buried me in. So no, You don't get to walk back in just because the wind changed direction. She whispered something I'll never forget. But you're still my blood. I smiled softly. Blood makes you related. Behavior makes you family. And yours made you a stranger. Then I walked inside. And that door? It didn't just close behind me. It sealed. The room was packed. Women, allies, community leaders. I shared my story, not as a victim, but as a survivor with power. I told them how I was once the helpful one, the forgotten one, the backbone everyone stepped on to dance, and how I stopped letting them. The applause afterward wasn't just polite. It was sacred. Afterward, a teenage girl came up to me, voice shaking. I read your blog. It helped me tell my dad to stop using my name for loans. I thought I was wrong until I saw you. That girl?
She was why I did this.
Not revenge. Not fame. But so women like her never feel alone in the storm their families made them walk through. I went home that night, my home, and curled up on the couch with tea. My house was finally how I'd imagined it. Warm, soft, safe. The doorbell rang once more. A small envelope sat on the step. No return address. Inside, a wrinkled note. We sold the ring. Alicia moved to another state.
I'm alone now.
You won, Mom. I folded the paper neatly, slid it into a drawer. Not out of sentiment, but to remember that peace is earned, not gifted. She was wrong, though. This wasn't about winning. It was about waking up. Waking up to a life where I no longer waited for permission to exist, to speak, to matter. I wasn't the extra seat at the table anymore. I was the table. I was the whole damn house. And no one would ever write my name on a debt again. Unless that debt spelled, you underestimated me.